BionicDance is filmed in front of a live studio audience.
The importance of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence in relationship to the perennial activity of human beings in philosophy and religion to imagine what God would be. That interaction is a remarkable coherence because are we special?
Insert short bus joke here. This notion of exceptionalism from people whose religion tells them that humility is a virtue, and the fact that they don't see the irony in this contradiction, is probably one of the many reasons aliens have never tried to contact us. And I'm kind of angry about that, frankly. I'd give a left body part to have an ET experience. Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers, BionicDance here. I've made no secret over the years of the fact that I'm a bit of a sci-fi geek, and I grew up on movies like E.T., Explorers, and Flight of the Navigator, where kids make friends with aliens. I wanted to have a similar experience so very, very much, and if aliens have found us and decided we're too goofy to contact because of chuckleheads like these, if Christians have denied me my first contact dream, I'm gonna be pissed. Fair warning, I might skip around a bit because these people spend a fair amount of time agreeing with each other and repeating what the last person said in their own words. Link in the description if you want to check whether I'm unfairly editing.
If you were to discover intelligent alien life, would that undermine at least the traditional God that we are all used to dealing with?
Yeah, Robert, I see that question as nonsense.
Of course you do. But let's keep in mind that part of the Abrahamic religions is that not even all of earthling kind, but just a tiny portion of the Middle East was God's chosen people. The idea that folks from another planet opening the hatch and saying hi wouldn't undermine Christian dogma just a little is what sounds like nonsense.
All right. If God exists and extraterrestrials exist, God was responsible for them, so how can their existence undermine God?
What if these aliens start knocking on our door like intergalactic Mormons to tell us their good news, and it's nothing like your good news? Oh, I know, Christians will probably shout, "Heretic!" and call them the devil's messengers or some crap, I'm sure. They'll probably go full on the day the Earth stood still and kill a few, sparking an intergalactic war for which Earth is completely unprepared. Or, something like that.
If God doesn't exist, there's still the question, do extraterrestrials exist or not? It's an open question to be asked of the universe and hopefully answered with experimental methods.
It's a gigantic universe out there. It's a gigantic galaxy out there, and the universe has billions of those. The probability that there are other planets that can and do sustain life is really high. I'd take those odds to Vegas.
Well, let's look at the realities that some people, many scientists, would look to the search for extraterrestrials as a weapon to attack what they would believe to be the destructive approach of traditional religion in saying how special we are, and that the discovery of extraterrestrials would in fact undermine this God, which may never have existed because of the way we've characterized it.
I don't know of any scientists who are looking for aliens specifically to undermine biblical claims. At best, that would be a side benefit. Two interesting points here. First, he describes scientists as enemies of Christianity. Given that science is specifically designed as a method of studying reality and has built into it ways of eliminating bias, the idea that science is anathema to religion is rather telling. Second, he mentions that discovering aliens might be used to undermine the God they've described. But would it? One thing we've all noticed about Christianity is the willingness of its followers to retcon their canon when it's shown to be faulty. Suddenly, contradicted passages are just metaphors, arguments for God get reworded, and somehow the faith goes on as Christianity 2.0. Well, more like Christianity 87,394.0, but you get the idea. So if we discovered alien life, something would be reinterpreted in order to not have to face a few uncomfortable truths.
But some would say this is very good, and they hope for the discovery, if only to undermine that religious tradition of specialness and triumphalism that may in fact do a lot of good for humanity, because it would destroy a lot of the problems that we see in the world.
It is really hard to put myself in the head of someone who seems to genuinely think that a SETI program would exist as a strategic defense initiative against Christianity. But from people who think they're that special and who follow a religion that teaches its followers will be persecuted, I suppose the notion that finding aliens is being done specifically to oppose their beliefs isn't much of a stretch. That doesn't make it any easier to empathize, though. Maybe it's just because I was never religious, but walking around with that notion in my head and thinking it's true is, no pun intended, alien. I know you don't believe me, but really, no pun intended this time, I do not grok.
Well, actually, I think that this whole idea of having any confidence that a particular discovery might undermine organized religion is, I think we've seen millennia of the counterexamples. Organized religion is extraordinarily flexible, and over the past thousands of years has been able to adjust itself to accommodate different cosmologies, different knowledge. And I would be very surprised if most organized religion would not be able to embrace the new knowledge that there are other intelligent civilizations in the universe.
And here she is outright stating what I said before. When their faith is contradicted, they change the religion to fit the new data, rather than facing the possibility that maybe what they believe might not be true. And frankly, that's rather hypocritical, even beyond the child security blanket attitude displayed toward their belief. Non-believers are expected to not merely change our worldview, but to abandon it entirely when we hear their message. But the idea of them doing the same when the facts aren't on their side, well, that's just obnoxious.
And I think the real challenge is, as we try to anticipate the nature of extraterrestrials, how do we avoid transposing our way of conceptualizing ourselves, our relationship with one another, our religious concerns onto other beings? If you look at the responses of Catholics to the idea of what would extraterrestrials be like in the first decade of the space age, there was this wide range of views, but really implicitly behind these views was a notion of the myth of Adam and Eve, that somehow that the story would be retold on other worlds of whether indeed other civilizations would be elevated, whether they would fall, whether there would be a redemption. And people laid out various possibilities of how other alternatives might or might not exist on other worlds.
He says the story of Adam and Eve might be told on other worlds. Does that mean it's only metaphorical? What does that imply about original sin? Was there another literal Garden of Eden on other planets? Did Jesus dying on the cross only save Earthlings or the whole universe? Maybe this dude isn't a sci-fi nerd like me, and probably like most of you, but what he's saying has implications I'm not sure he's thought through, but which are the bread and butter of TV shows like Star Trek and The Orville.
So I think the real challenge is for us to be open to extraterrestrials being very different than we are. Some have said that if extraterrestrials have a religion of their own, if they're much more advanced than we are, it would be very difficult to resist that. I don't buy it, because I think that our religions serve human needs for some people. For some people, there's no need for a religion.
This guy actually seems like a Christian with whom I could get along. Oh, don't mistake me, I think his beliefs are still dorky. But if he truly thinks that the purpose of Christianity is to serve as a source of comfort, and, as he implies, that it's okay to be an atheist, then he's not the sort of person to whom my videos are usually directed. That said, though, he doesn't seem all that concerned about what's true, and to most outspoken atheists, truth and facts are very important. If any religion actually describes reality, I want to know it, even if I find the notion uncomfortable. I'm not sure this guy does. I like his live and let live philosophy, but I'm not on board with his unwillingness to suppose that these alien missionaries, or these alien atheists, might just have a point. But whatever. I'm only having a go at these people because, damn it, aliens are important to me. I'd give so very much to meet a few, or for that raid on Area 51 that never really happened to have succeeded. Oh well. Another childhood dream goes down the crapper.
I see two very strong areas that need to be thought about. One is the universals that we have, and the other is the richness of the diversity. I think it would be very exciting to transmit the idea of our diverse approaches to meaning and God and all of those things. That would give an understanding.
Actually, Freeman Dyson is very fond of teasing me when I get up and say that in the SETI community we have informally agreed that should we receive a signal, that we would not transmit any kind of response until there was some global consensus on who should speak for Earth and what should we say. And Freeman just looks at me and he says, "You gotta be kidding." As soon as you announce a detection of a signal and give its coordinates and its nature, anybody who can get their hands on a transmitter is going to. And he says, and wouldn't that great cacophony be about the best description of 21st century Earth that we could send?
And that's the last communication you'll ever get from those guys out there.
I mean, yeah, hardy-har, humans are a bunch of twits, waka-waka. But this notion of trying to nominate someone to speak for all humanity is, I'll say it, kinda scary. Right now, in the United States, I don't feel very represented, and I see memes from other countries that seem to assume all USers are the same, these MAGA hat-wearing, assault rifle-toting, fat-ass scooter muppets cruising Walmart. And that's so not me. And that's just here on Earth. The idea of having, say, Donald Trump being the spokesperson for humanity when the saucers show up is terrifying. We'd all be death-starred before he finished a second sentence, assuming his response wasn't to launch nukes. We'd still be destroyed, of course. The only difference is why. I'd rather these hypothetical aliens see the cacophony. Maybe they'll see this video and realize some of us aren't terribly dippy. Seriously. Aliens, if you're out there, I will no joke pay you to abduct me. It'll be worth the probing just to get off this benighted backwater world. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please, think. And I grew up on movies like E.T., Explorers, and Flight of the Navigator. Given that science is specifically designed as a method of studying reality, when their faith is contradicted, they change the religion to fit the new data, rather than facing the possibility. Now let's do that over. And as he implies that it's okay to be an atheist, then he's not the sort of person, for.
You know, Dewey, we wouldn't have to do this if I had more Patreon patrons. Just saying.
Not rating and subscribing has been found to cause obesity, acne, and male pattern baldness in laboratory rats.